Well, hello there. It's another day. I'm Jim Harrington.
And I am Bill Knight. Well, the Super Bowl is over. It came down to just seconds. Maybe a controversial call on a holding thing and a field goal, and that was it. It's all history now.
Yep. I don't know about you, but I'm a bit of a football purist, and all of the glitz and glamour that we see on Super Bowl Sunday, I don't get into that anymore.
So you didn't like the halftime show?
I like some of the commercials. I did. The commercials weren't bad. Some of them were a bit woke. For example, there was a commercial from, I believe it was Netflix, about how they were working hand in hand with General Motors to put more electric vehicles in their TV programs and movies. And I thought, oh, come on, folks. I mean, they're really pushing that electric car thing, and I think that is going to go over like a pregnant pole vaulter because...
Why are they doing that? Are they getting money to do that?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know, but each one of those commercials cost, $3 million a piece? And one of the funny things last night, they showed a 10-second promo for Gutfeld. Did you see that?
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, and it started out like it was going to be a commercial, a regular commercial, but it ends in like 10 or 15 seconds in, and they said, I'm sorry, Greg, but these things cost a lot of money. We can't afford it. And they went to the next commercial. It started out being this big, glamorous production, and
that's all they could afford.
That's all they could afford. Exactly right. But anyway, it's over. It's behind us. Someone said today, I saw on Facebook, well, now it's on to baseball. So I don't know about baseball, too. Baseball has lost some of its glamour. Maybe I'm just getting old.
Well, that could be, too. I mean, look, I looked at Rhiannon, and, she looked like the big red boot that you can buy for several $1,000s now. But she looked like that. I didn't realize that she was pregnant. I did until afterwards. She was like, I'm going, what kind of moves are those? She's covering that up. But...
Well, it's funny. They described her dancers like they were all dressed in white with masks. They said they looked like the dancing Wuhan lab workers. And I thought, well, that's
they probably aren't far from right. And the lyrics, the butt grabbing, the crotch grabbing, and the lyrics with the not even subtle double entendre or innuendo. It was blatant sex.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, women are saying, we want respect. We're in control of our bodies. We want respect. And then they go do some crappy stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it makes you wish they showed Paul McCartney in the booth watching the game. I was thinking, Paul, why couldn't you come down and done the halftime? Because even at 80, your halftime would be better than what we just saw. I literally, during halftime, they said it was going to be a half-an-hour program, which is another thing. Every football player in the stadium,
39 minutes.
Yeah, they get cooled off. They're sitting around waiting for this thing to end, and they've lost a lot of their pacing and their timing. It changes the game.
Well, yeah, what you see on TV is made for TV, not made for the game. So really, when you see that, it's not a fair game or representation. I used to sit there and go see the Steelers, at Three Rivers all the time.
Yeah.
And, all of a timeout on the field, and then they break for a commercial.
And the guys will stand
around.
Yeah.
They're just like,
the referee's
talking to each other, the opposing team going, and they got to get back into the groove. And I used to use a lot of these guys to do, little
sports updates and things like that. And
you pay them on. Yeah, you get them in once a week or twice a week. My competition was known for doing that. I did it too. And you get to know some of these guys, and then you talk to them, and they're like going, so what do you do during that minute? Going, well,
it's
trying to keep my head in the game because I'm out of it. By the time.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I believe that absolutely 100%. But, hey, it is a business, and that's how they make their money. So,
and they make big money doing it, and that's just it. I think they get beat up more practicing during the week because there are no cameras to break.
You
know,
told
they're
me an
not.
interesting story about the late Kevin Green, who was a terrific football player. He played for the Steelers, and for who else? He played for Carolina,
Well, he
Tennessee.
played for the 49ers. He played for Carolina, and then
He
he
coached
also
the
did
Jets.
the Jaguars, and then he was a coach at uh, uh,
For the
the
Jets.
Cheeseheads.
He was
No,
he
the
was
Cheeseheads.
yeah, Green Bay Packers, but
Yeah.
he also coached, I believe, the Jets too. He had
And
a
then he had a son that he wanted to spend time with, so he retired from the game for a few years. Now I lost touch with him because we built a friendship,
right.
and I lost touch with him, and I didn't actually, because media cycles are weird, and I don't pay a lot of attention to media news these days. Haven't for a while, but we lost him back in 2020, and I was going,
Right.
well, that's why I didn't hear from him that year, and since
58
I didn't
years
know.
old. 58. He died very young. Strong guy, but I point that out because they really beat themselves up. They really beat themselves up. And you talked about how he would come into the building and what would happen to him.
Yeah, well, yeah, we he called one time. Remember when they had that famous rematch with Dallas?
Mm-hmm.
And I have a couple of interesting stories, but I'll keep it thin here and just to this one. The simple fact is he goes, man, I'd like to do something. I said, what do you want to do? And he goes, well, I'd like to do a radio show for an hour. And I'm going, well, Kevin, I'll give you the time on the air.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're 50,000 watts. We cover everything. We're the other rock station in town. So yeah, you can do that. You got to stick to the music that we have in the library and keep it clean. Other than that, you can sit there and do everything. Now, we didn't really publicize it because I knew that we were at Parkway Center on the 7th floor.
Right.
Chances are word gets out we were going to have a security nightmare, which we had the nightmare. He couldn't come up through the elevators. He had been practicing all day.
Mm-hmm.
And this poor guy came off the field and came there, and we had to get a decoy, to come through the front to lure everyone around.
Right.
When we snuck him in the back, and he went up the stairs. And we had a team of guys on each side of him to help him climb
This
up
this
the
was
stairs.
a professional athlete at the time. He was
In
an
his
active.
30s, but that's
Yeah.
really in his 30s. But the point is, at that stage of life, you're kind of old for the game. But, he on the field,
Yeah.
he's a monster.
Yeah.
But he was a monster in practice, too. After the end of the game,
he put everything into the game and had
He was
nothing
beat up.
left. He had nothing left when he was out and about. No, a lot of guys are like that. And you see guys, Kevin, what was it, Nitschke, I forgot his first name. I should know it. He played back in the 50s for the Packers. And
Right.
after the game was over, Ray Nitschke, he was a heck of a football player. But after the game was over, he had a hard time getting out of bed in the morning and walking around. His knees were shot, his hips were shot. And a lot of football players are like that. This young guy who almost died on the field a few weeks ago.
he was at the game.
But his life will forever be different than what he thought it was going to be.
Well, just a case in point, when something happens, especially your heart, it doesn't matter how healthy you are, and how maybe non-sequential it was that happened to you. Once something happens in your body like that, you always question it.
Yeah.
You
live a more tenuous life. Everything is cautious.
You're out jogging, the weather's a little bit cool, and you feel that, how you get that like kind of a
Flutter.
that weird burn in your lungs, and you feel it down in your chest. You're going, wait a minute, am I having a you question everything about yourself.
Yep.
And be all of it because his mortality became in question after what happened to him, and that rings in your mind forever.
Well, I don't know about you. I'm glad for the Chiefs. I also would have been glad for the Eagles too. They played a great game.
I think there were two bad calls. The one, did he maintain control? They had like 36
I thought he
different
had
angles.
it. Didn't you think he had
Yeah,
that?
he had it. He had control, but that did help out, the Chiefs there because they would have converted that right there. They had control. They could have done anything they wanted.
That was a terrible call, and that was under review. They took a while reviewing that. I don't know what he was looking at, I don't know where he what videotape he was saying, but everything they were showing us showed him locking that ball. It was against his helmet, but that's not a problem as long as he has control of it, and he had control.
He had control of it, and I mean, plus the call came from upstairs. That's the only way that call could come. The coaches couldn't do it because he had the foot control. They were in. So I don't know. I'm not a football aficionado. Somebody go, Bill, you don't know what you're talking about. And you know what? I will tell you, you are absolutely right. I don't. I'm just going by what my eyes saw.
I know a lot of guys who do. I knew a lot of guys who did sports talk who didn't know a lot about football either. But then again, that's a story for another time. But we're being distracted by a lot of things over this weekend. Football, Super Bowl Sunday weekend. All the talk is of the game. In the meantime, I don't know whether you're aware of this or not, folks. Probably not. But there was a fourth balloon. A fourth
Yeah, we got
balloon.
4 balloons down.
We have more balloons than some state fairs right now. It's amazing. This one was shot down over Lake Huron, and there was a big briefing. I got to play this for you. A big, important briefing about the fourth balloon. And one of our stalwart reporters asked the question, was it an alien balloon, object? Was it what do they call it? UFO. Was it a UFO?
Unidentified flying
And I guess the head of NORAD, General Glenn Van Herk, responded. Listen.
Hi, thanks, Pat, and thanks for doing this. This is for General Van Herk. Because you still haven't been able to tell us what these things are that we are shooting out of the sky, that raises the question, have you ruled out aliens or extraterrestrials, and if so, why? Because that is what everyone is asking us right now.
And thanks for the question, Helene. I'll let the intel community and the counterintelligence community figure that out. I haven't ruled out anything at this point. We continue to assess every threat or potential threat unknown that approaches North America with the attempt to identify it.
Okay, so I have to tell you, friends, if I had more time, I would have had the X-Files music playing behind that. Do, 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 do.
Well, you do that so well.
Thank you.
You could be a sound effect guy just with your own mouth.
I worked at plenty of small stations where they couldn't afford to buy the music, so I had to sing. But anyway, it's ridiculous. He could have said, hey, it wasn't a UFO. This was a balloon. We just don't know where it came from. But he had to say, I'll leave that for the intelligence experts to figure out. Someone said over the weekend that it actually was a balloon. I don't think they're. I think they're. And by the way,
we're shooting down.
They're shooting them down with sidewinders. Quarter
we're
$250,000
down
at a pop.
everything right now. We're shooting down everything. If you got a wedding coming up, don't launch any balloons. I mean, just this weekend, I had a few good ideas that got shot down.
I'm sure. Bada bing.
I got to go get some coffee after that one.
I think so. But the military is not shining. I mean, remember, folks, last week they spent 8 days watching a balloon. I mean, they couldn't figure out what the heck to do. I mean, this thing, they saw it coming across the Pacific. They followed it across the Aleutian Islands, that whole chain of islands, right? That took some time. Then it went into Alaska and then down into Canada. Then it went into Montana. All the while, we were watching it, and we could have done something, but nope. They were afraid that if it fell down, it might hurt somebody on the ground. Mind you, there are more elk in some of these places than people. There's more moose in Alaska. Mooses. Exactly. So these guys are just beyond belief. And then when they were uncovered that they had this balloon and they wouldn't have told us about it. Remember this, they wouldn't have told us about the balloon if it wasn't for a newspaper reporter in Billings, Montana, who had a caller say, would you look up in the sky, there's a UFO, and he went out and saw it, and he had one of his photographers take a picture of it, and they put it in the Billings newspaper, and then, of course, it caught fire, and they had to admit there's an unidentified flying object up there. But then they let it go, and knocked it down off the coast of South Carolina. I mean,
well, we did retrieve it, and we did get one piece of intel, and that was the frequency. Now, we couldn't see those things because our radar wasn't aiming that high, and number two, apparently this gave me cause for alarm. I'm like going, it's not aimed that high, okay, but even if it was, you still wouldn't have seen it because you needed the frequency of the transmitter of the balloon,
well,
which they got. Now we see a bunch of them up there.
Chuck Todd opened Meet the Press yesterday. This is before balloon number 4. This was after balloon number 3. And Chuck Todd had this to say about the balloons.
Good Sunday morning. For the second day in a row and the third time in a week, the U.S. military has shot down suspicious high-altitude objects over North America. U.S. fighter jets downed unidentified objects over Alaska on Friday and Canada on Saturday. This quick reaction comes after criticism that President Biden's response to the Chinese spy balloon last week was delayed while it drifted over the United States for days until being shot down after it left the Carolina coast. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau ordered the takedown of a cylindrical object over the Yukon on Saturday afternoon. He spoke with President Biden, who also ordered the object to be shot down. The FAA temporarily closed airspace in central Montana when NORAD detected a radar anomaly and sent fighter aircraft to investigate. They did not find anything that correlated with those radar hits. Just a day earlier, Biden ordered another unidentified object, roughly the size of a small car, so we've been told, shot down over frozen water in Alaskan airspace. But at a White House briefing, officials did not disclose the incident until reporters brought it up.
Can you speak to rumors that there is another Chinese balloon above Alaska or any other parts of U.S. territory that the U.S. shot down?
So I can confirm that the Department of Defense was tracking a high-altitude object over Alaska airspace in the last 24 hours. The object was flying at an altitude of 40,000 feet and posed a reasonable threat to the safety of civilian flight. Out of an abundance of caution and at the recommendation of the Pentagon, President Biden ordered the military to down the object.
Again, for some reason, the spokesperson, John Kirby, did not volunteer this information about fighter jets being scrambled to shoot down another object until a reporter in that room asked. In a statement on Saturday, the U.S. military could not provide details about the object, including its capabilities, purpose, or origin. And again, there's some weather issues when it comes to actually collecting this thing that was shot down. The shoot down occurred as the U.S. Navy and Coast Guard continue to recover remnants of the Chinese spy balloon from the Atlantic Ocean last week. We asked the White House and the Pentagon to provide any guest this morning to tell us more about these incidents. Both declined.
But wait, the White House did have something to say. Karine Jean-Pierre was on one of the weekend talk programs, and I want you to listen to how eloquent she was when she described the situation, okay?
Why is the American military shooting something out of the sky over Canada?
Because it's part of NORAD. The NORAD is part of it's a what you call a coalition, a consortium,
a pact of nations.
A pact,
okay.
Exactly. And so that's why we were able to do that. Again, we didn't do it on our own. We did it clearly in step with Canada.
Did you hear the very end of that?
Canada.
Yes, we did it in step with Canada. Well, not Canada, mind you, Canada. And of course, I thought she really got to the point when she was describing exactly what happened. She just knew exactly where her answer was going, and it was a very interesting trip.
Oh, it was a trip, all right. Right,
oh, God.
Face plant in the floor is what it was.
You have to laugh or you cry, because otherwise you just would all be yelling, "We're doomed, we're doomed."
Well, we really are, because this is a crack in the dam that protects us from potentially being flooded out here. We have to have a special frequency. So change the frequency of the transmitter. We can't see these dang things again.
I don't believe the frequency thing, by the way. You have to believe that what they're telling us is true. I don't think there's a scintilla of truth that has come out of this administration with regard to these balloons. I don't know whether the balloons are shooting down now every 20 minutes. I don't know that those balloons aren't being released by the U.S. government off the coast of Alaska. I mean, are they trying to make it sound like they're just they happen all the time? I mean, it's almost like a weather pattern. We talk about storms coming in from here. We can talk about balloons coming in from over there.
Well, China now is saying that we've been flying balloons over China for the past year, over 10 of them, and I'm like going. But they didn't offer up any proof. But, what they are telling us, there's an evil game being played. And are we being punked? Are we being set up? Is this the precursor of something very nefarious about to happen?
Well, it's
because
interesting.
Obviously, we don't have any clue.
It's interesting you said China, because China did come out over the weekend and said they took down a UFO.
Yeah.
They took down they called it a UFO. And by the way, for us to release balloons over China, we would have to get permission from another country to launch them, because they're carried by the jet stream and things like that, by the winds. And you're trying to tell me we'd let them off, we'd launch them in New York or something and have them take 3 weeks to get to China and nobody would know about them in England, France, Germany? Come on, folks.
Or you could take a big, what are those big transport planes? The
KC-135?
Yeah, take a KC-135, put a crew of 5 or 10 balloons back there, get up to about 40,000 feet, open the back hatch, and let them go out.
Throw those suckers out the back of the airplane.
Who the hell would know until, they showed up, blipped on the radar? Where'd they come from?
Operation Let 'Em Fly, yes. You got to love it. So why are we being distracted by all these balloons? I think it's because they don't want us talking about the Cy Hirsch story, for example, the one we talked about on Friday, Bill.
Yeah,
the Nord Stream 2 explosion. He came out and explained who did it and why, and the answer was
that is talk now going around. People are going, did Joe actually authorize this? Because it is a scary feat that they did. If we did that, well, that was an act of aggression and war, and that gives Russia everything that they need. And you got to wonder, too, about Russia taking all the hits in their military. And I forget what they have. They got a new super tank out there that, just all of a sudden the Ukrainians sat there and they just blew one up to smithereens. And I'm like going, they couldn't have done that without help. They couldn't have done it without help. But it gave Zelensky all the cause to say, well, we're 1 year in and we demand more sophisticated weaponry.
Yeah.
And I'm going like, we're being suckered into a war. And that's how I feel.
A Romanian senator, and I don't have her name. I heard the audio and the translation, went out and spoke on the floor of, I believe it was the EU. But she came out and said that we are being lied to about so many things. For example, she explained that what happened in Turkey, from the information that she has, was actually an intentional act. It was a terroristic act by one of the major superpowers. She didn't say which one, but it leaned towards the U.S. because we're the people who have developed HARP. HARP is they call it a weather program where we can manipulate the weather. They started it back in the 90s, and it's been very top secret. But a lot of people think that because of this HARP program, they can now create and enhance weather systems. And some of these systems can cause earthquakes, by the way. She said
it's a possibility.
She said it was no accident that this earthquake in Turkey happened in one of the smallest populated cities in the country. It was like here's what we can do to your country whenever we want to. And there are pictures on the internet of unusual disc-like cloud patterns above the area where the earthquake took place. And we talked about this last week. There's videotape of flashes in the sky just before the earthquakes happen. Not while the earthquakes happened, because you could say those were transformers exploding. These happened just before the earthquake happened in Turkey. So I don't know whether we're being told everything. And friends, could we do something like that? I wouldn't put it past technology.
Yeah, and if we are playing with the tectonic plates of the planet, that's a very dumb thing to do because that's where volcanoes they lie under the tectonic plates. They move, it creates an opening, and the gases come up, and the magma comes up, and you have the eruption. You know, we do have some super volcanoes around, and all of these plates.
One I can think of right off the top of my head. One I can think of right off the top of my head is Yellowstone. They said
Yellowstone.
They say if that goes, we're screwed.
Vesuvius, you got now that what's that city there? That is there's a big lake there, the old Roman
Pompeii
resort. Yeah, and there was the resort that's now underwater because that whole ocean lake there is a super cauldron. And it's you know, and there's signs that, you know, it's been 40,000 years or something like that since it's done anything. But Yellowstone too.
A scientist explained that if Yellowstone goes, it's going to have a devastating effect for the entire North American continent. And it will last for yees.
United States would be history. But, you know, this is a fragile planet. You know, this planet will be here shaking off the ticks that fall upon it long after we are dead and gone, you know.
But, the thing is, Bill, we don't act like it's delicate. I never, even as a young man, I can remember thinking, boy, we're setting off all these super megaton nuclear explosions all over the place. Doesn't that have an effect on our Earth? You know, you talked
Everything
about the tectonic plates. You know, doesn't that have an effect on everything like that?
Sure it does.
They don't act like it does. They just keep saying, and their answer was, don't set them off in Nevada anymore. We'll set them off underground, which never made a lot of sense to me. I mean, it's like that's even worse. Set off a nuclear.
Why are we even playing with nuclear bombs anymore? I mean, we had our fun with them. Now it's time to get rid of them. But we can't get rid of the plutonium and the isotopes that we've created. I mean, the half-life on them is so long lived. I don't know what you do with this stuff.
We talked about this on Friday, but a scientist said that they go around looking for oil and certain minerals, and they use sound to do it. And they use certain frequencies. They'll generate a certain frequency, and if they get a certain bounce back on that sound, like sonar, they can tell what they've hit. They've hit oil, they've hit iron, they've hit whatever. And they said the problem, and all that's good, nothing happens bad, but they can create bad by making a discordant sound, where you have multiple frequencies all at once, and that can cause the earth to vibrate. A scientist said that, and that makes a lot of sense when you think about it. And I got to think that that's what probably a variation of that is what happened. If they did have a hand in the earthquake, if it was man-made, they used something like that.
Well, everything has a resonant frequency, and those plates go all around the globe. Now, I don't know where they go through in Russia or China, but we sure as hell have a lot of them in the United States. So be careful, because sometimes you reap what you sow.
Yeah, hey, don't.
And somebody can give it back. We've got the Ring of Fire, that goes along the West Coast and circles around.
Yeah.
And, a big tectonic plate there. I think there was a movie based on that tectonic.
Oh, there was.
Tectonic plate.
The Pacific Rim I think it was what it was called, Pacific Rim.
Yeah, and there was a thing too with the Rock Johnson, because one of the things that they used to do, I don't know about Hoover Dam, I know Pine Flat Dam in California was built on an inactive fault, because that's what the Army Corps of Engineers. It's inactive. Great place to put a dam.
Sure.
And then
obviously a military genius, really
working
overtime.
Guy was a real ace, and then let's put a dam there. And now they're going,
maybe not
it's been
such a good
for
move.
years, but we might not have should have done that.
They haven't talked much about that oil pipeline that has been interrupted. the one that goes from the West Coast through out to Las Vegas. That's like it's no big deal, but it is a big deal.
Yeah.
And even worse, another major story that we're not talking about, and we should be, is there was a train derailment in northeastern Ohio, and this happened last week, and they had to evacuate the town because there were
I didn't
dangerous.
hear about a train derailment.
Well, we were too busy watching a silly balloon that was meandering across our skies. Yeah. In the meantime, we have poisonous gases being released over a large section of our country, but not something you have to worry
well,
about.
what kind of poisonous gas are we talking about? There's different levels.
They haven't identified all of them, but one they believe was on that train was chlorine.
Oh, they had a tanker of chlorine. You know, that stuff has a kill
I know.
pattern of 5 to 15 miles, instant death.
Well, now they're saying, it's okay. You can go back to your house now. But by the way, if you go back to your house, would ask that you get some diluted bleach and wipe everything that you touch down, your counters, your doors, your door handles, your floors, wash all your sheets. Is this reassuring to you as a resident of that area that everything is okay? And by the way, they still will admit that they haven't got a handle on all of the chemicals that were on that derailed train.
So this is in Ohio. So this train was probably coming up through Parkersburg, going into Ohio because it came up from probably Charleston because that's where they make the chlorine.
It's not too far from Cleveland and from Pittsburgh. I'm just saying, two major cities. They said that there were noises and sparks coming from the train. They've got it on videotape as far as 20 miles from where the train derailed, but nobody stopped the train. They just figured, aren't those lights pretty? And they kept driving the darn train. I would have thought that there were crew members like conductors or train managers or something who on occasion would just lean their head out the window to see whether everything is okay on the train. Nowadays
you can't see out of the train.
Well, nowadays we have video cameras too, don't we? We have a video camera everywhere. You would think that they would have video cameras.
Have sensors.
Yeah, we would have video cameras all throughout a train. If a train's 2 miles long, maybe the conductor could sit in the caboose and he could look at a sea of screens and see how his train's doing.
Well, actually, there's no cabooses anymore. For the most part, there's not a caboose on a train anymore.
Well, then he could sit up in the front. He could sit up in the engine area and look at. I mean, heck, nowadays they can monitor the trains from stations that are off-site. They can be
There should be monitors on the tanker. If there's a problem, especially if it's got a deadly gas.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, now, chlorine is used for a lot of great things, but the chlorine by itself, the gas, they do the shelter in place thing.
It's terrible.
Yeah, it gets in the air. That's it. You're done.
No, we're supposed to feel good. And by the way, they're saying you can go back to your house, but the train, they didn't pick everything up and take it away yet. It's still smoldering and still lying in a crumpled mess on the rail site, because we're talking about all these different chemicals, and you just can't go in there with a crew and move everything out. So I guess they figure, okay, it's everything's under control now. So I would be very hesitant about moving back into the area too.
I mean, how do they clean that up? Do they drain it? Do they do a slow release? I don't know, because I'm not one of those kind of guys, a hazmat guy. And
then again, this begs the question, where is Pete Buttigieg? Where is our Secretary of Transportation? Was he on site at that derailment? Was he adding his expertise? Or was he out vacationing in Portugal or someplace like he's done in the recent past?
He's going to ask them for a detailed memo of what happened and how they're going to fix it. And that's his solution. In other words, tell me what went wrong and how we can correct this, and then I'm going to hold you accountable for it.
I would also
I
would also add that he's probably going to come out and do a study as to the racial inequity of this derailment and who did it affect most? This derailment, did it affect a certain segment of our community more than another segment of our community? He's going to make it a woke racial thing as opposed to a transportation thing. Never mind that the rails may be 50 years old and cracked in the area. I'm just saying.
Well, the tracks are old. That is true. The infrastructure, and it takes a long time to redo all of that stuff. We still, we talk about, well, you can't do gas. We got to go electric. But,
do you know, nowadays, Bill, they have these, I don't know if you've seen these things or not. In the old days when they were laying track, they had to lay them in sections, little,
right.
pieces. Now they have an engine, and
it drops it right in front, and they connect it, and boom.
It's like a spool of rail. And they just unroll the rail as it drives down the track. It's the most amazing thing. There's a lot of easier ways to work on our infrastructure, but we're not doing it. We're sending all of our money to the Ukraine.
Of course we are. And we could actually, look, our rail system is dilapidated. The number one way to move product from A to B is still the rail system, because you can haul more freight that way and get it from A to B in a relatively small amount of time. You can't put it all up in planes.
Right.
You can't do it by truck. Truck is your second backup, but it's not train.
Yeah.
They can never make up for that.
Bill, we have so many distractions. My gosh, we have this derailment, which is a major story we should be following. I mean, it could affect maybe a large swath of our country, major cities. But no, we're not talking about it. We're just talking about balloons. We have this Nord Stream 2 thing. Someone said with regards to the balloons, those little balloons, what if they were from Russia and Russia was scoping out our Alaska pipeline with those balloons? They did admit, by the way, that those little balloons did have a payload on them. Initially, they had said they didn't know why they didn't have payloads, but now they're saying there was a payload on the little balloons, and they were.
What was the payload?
Well, they didn't say, but it was carrying something. But if it was carrying cameras and other sensors, maybe they were scoping out our Alaska pipeline, looking for a soft spot so that they could return the favor, so to speak.
Well, didn't we have 2 leaks last week in some pipelines?
We did. We had the one, like I said, the one that came from the West Coast towards Las Vegas, and I forgot where the other one was. But
Keystone.
Was it Keystone? Okay.
Keystone had sprung a leak.
So we had two leaks, and we're not talking about that.
We're not. We're not even talking about the fact that, the stuff that we had that Joe shut down. We've put ourselves in a very precarious situation with this country and energy and oil and electricity that it's not going to be easy to dig ourselves out of this hole.
Well, these are supposed to be environmentally conscious people on the left. And
yeah, right.
You would think that a leak on the pipeline would get their attention. I mean, if there's a leak on a crude oil pipeline from Las Vegas to the West Coast, where does the stuff go? I'm just asking. I know I'm just a stupid old radio announcer kind of guy, right? But if there's a leak on a pipe, that says to me there's oil coming from that leak. Okay?
Yeah, it's going in the ground, and when it goes into the ground, what does it do to the water table?
Is it going into the ground, or is it causing a big pool of it somewhere that they're not talking about?
Well, either way, it's hitting the ground, and it hits the ground, it soaks into the ground, it goes into the water table. And that is a problem because, whether you realize it or not, our water runs fluidly underground everywhere. So we could be poisoning something that will be picked up miles and miles away, and it might be months or years before we know it, but then it's going to be too late.
Remember the big oil leak? Was it BP?
Yeah.
BP oil leak in the Gulf of Mexico a few years ago. Maybe it was 12 years ago. And that was a big story. I mean, every news crew was out there. They were taking videotape and shuttling it back and forth from the rig out there in the Gulf of Mexico. And it was wall to wall. They had coverage all the time. They had reporters everywhere. They had them on the ground and in the air. They were everywhere, those reporters. But now we have this leak out in California. It's crickets. I mean, I had to look deep to get the story because there was the Super Bowl going on and we had more important things to talk about. We had to cover Joe's gluteus maximus. You know, by the way, they showed a picture of Jill. She was at the game, and she was wearing her Philadelphia Eagles shirt. And I love Philadelphia. I really do love it. Nice city. And
she didn't help the team that much.
No, she didn't bring any luck to the Eagles last night. I thought to myself, thank goodness she wasn't wearing a Chiefs shirt because they would have lost. We have listeners in Kansas City, too. That's why. You can't, and when you do a broadcast that can be heard around the world, you have to be careful because you got listeners in Philadelphia. You don't want to alienate them, and you got listeners in Kansas City. You don't want to alienate them. So I was rooting for the football team last night.
Yeah, I rooted for the winner, and I didn't know who the winner was going to be until the end of the game.
Yeah,
and so I rooted for.
And I was glad there was one. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, well, there was a time when they would have just said, both teams won, they're both winners, and there are no losers in life.
I was rooting for the team that had the highest score, actually.
Really? Yeah. I don't know. I was rooting for the team that had the cheerleaders and the skimpiest outfits.
I am sure you were.
Wait.
You rascal. So this is going to be an interesting week. You have to ask yourself, where are we going with all of this nonsense? I got a feeling we're going to see more balloons. They're going to talk.
Oh, yeah, the balloons aren't going away. But, there's a reason for these balloons. And when I say we, I mean you, me, and John Q. Public, we don't know. Somebody knows somewhere. Although Chuck Schumer did come out. Could you imagine if he was president? It'd be Charles in charge. But anyway, he did. Charles in charge. Chuck E.
Bada
Cheese.
bing.
He did say that they were definitely balloons.
If you get a chance,
I can rest better now that he did say that. He held a press conference.
If you get a chance, go look at they have a map of the flight path of the balloons, and they're all over the place. It's like you gave a pencil to a 2-year-old and said, draw a straight line.
You know what I was thinking? Yeah, there was that. Do you remember they used to show it on TV? You get a pack of pins, different colored pins, and it was a circle with a thing that would go around, and you could make all these like cool little art form things. I forget what it was called.
Etch-a-sketch.
Etch-a-sketch was the little thing with the two wheels.
Yes, exactly.
No, yeah, this was a different thing where you could make pictures, and kids used to sit there and go, "Oh, look at what I created in class." You're sitting there doing that while the teacher's up there lecturing.
This is the flight. If this was a planned exercise by some country, they were doing LSD when they were flying this plane.
It's like, that thing was like a Joe Biden speech.
Exactly. Yeah. As a matter of fact, in case you missed it, folks, from last week, we could play a little bit of the new Joe Biden theme song. Would you like to hear it?
Oh, sure.
This will only take a second. You'll recognize Joe. He does the lead. Listen.
Oh, yeah, some Joe macaron. Yeah, macaron. No, chacaron, 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 chacaron.
All right, Joe. Thank you very much. We'll get him some. Let's get him some ice. Let's get him some ice cream.
Oh, jeez.
You have to laugh because if you don't laugh, you cry. But so we have these hearings that are taking place. They started last week. The Republicans, and everyone gets excited about them, including yours truly. We're all kind of interested. Oh, finally, the truth is getting out about so many things. But then I think to myself, what good is going to come from these hearings? Are we going to just sit there for the next few months or few years watching these people talk about these things and getting irate and pounding table, but nothing happens? Nobody pays any penalty.
Democrats still have a lot of power, and of course, what they're doing is saying the Republicans are weaponizing.
Like they didn't. Yeah,
like
they didn't.
So I'm sitting there going, sure they are, but what was Steve Bannon?
Yeah,
unleashed on Joe, warning him about his deviant son and how they were going to get the bottom of how he sold out this country and that Joe's a bum too.
But nothing is happening. As a matter of fact, as of last week, Hunter Biden, his law firm was going on the offensive now. They were going. They were telling people like Rudy Giuliani, hang on to all of your stuff because we're coming after you. This is Hunter Biden, his lawyers going after the person who actually the star, the guy who brought it all out.
Yeah, but, perception is reality. And it seems like the media is protecting him and Dad. And, speaking of protecting, you remember just a few months ago, the FTX scandal with the cryptocurrency and the billions of dollars that are gone there. And apparently, not only did Democrats get that money and they're sitting on it, but so did some of the news sources too. So it's in their best interest to, flush that story away, and nothing's ever going to come of it. They stole money, the biggest financial scandal probably in our history. It's just like a fart in the wind.
Look at Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
Where did that story go? Word is that many of the people who traveled to Epstein Island were very big names in the political scene. I mean, it would have affected countries and presidents. I'll just leave it at that. So they had to bury it, and they've done that. That story, when Ghislaine Maxwell was being tried, everybody thought, "Oh, finally, we're going to find out who did what."
No, we're not.
We found out nothing. Zero.
Yeah. Squat. Diddly on top of the squat.
No. I like diddly on top of the squat is a lot of diddly. But I got to tell you, if it was Bill Knight or Jim Harrington who had done something like this, it would have been all over the front page of the New York Times. You would have known about it, no big deal. But some of these world leaders, it's hush-hush. And, I can't help but think they were interviewing Bill Gates a few weeks ago. Did you see this? Do you remember this?
Yeah, I did.
And they said, do you feel sorry about having been on Epstein Island? Do you regret having gone there? He says, well, I regret having had dinner with him. That's what he said. I regret having had dinner with him. And then the reporter continued, well, do you regret going to the island? Do you regret knowing Jeffrey Epstein? And he said, well, he's dead. That's what he said. And he said it with kind of a sick smile. Well, he's dead. And I'm thinking, only a guy who thinks he's above the law, only a guy who has more money than most people on this planet combined could have that kind of an attitude. I don't believe this guy thinks he's ever going to die. I don't think a guy like Bill Gates...
No, I think that they've got their sights set on immortality. And as far as him saying he's dead... he's thinking that, well, he's dead. He can't hurt me now.
Yes.
Where he is, he can't hurt me. That's almost like an admission that you had something to do with it.
But but I took care of that. Now try to prove it. He's dead.
Yeah. Where's your proof? They're dead too if you got a witness.
I mean, you have who's the prince over there in England? I can't think of his name. I should know these things. The brother of King Charles, but who was having an affair with...
I know who you're talking about.
I can't remember his first name.
Don't ask me about the royals.
I should know these things. And this is going to take off a lot of our English listeners, too. We have regular English listeners, and they're going to say, you should know these things, Jim. That was Prince Edward, Prince Charles, I'll think of it later.
When the show's over, it'll come to you.
Yeah, when I'm doing something important like having coffee. But he gets in trouble. He got the boot from the royal family. And I think he's persona non grata at the palace now. I don't think he's allowed in the palace. I mean, that's pretty tough if you spent your whole life being able to hang around Buckingham Palace and people saluting you and stuff, and all of a sudden, not anymore.
You go now.
You go stand with those tourists over there. The next tourist thing is in 20 minutes. You can come with the tourists.
There you go.
He got in trouble because Great Britain held him responsible for what he had done. At least that was something. I salute the British people for having the gonads to do something. There's a consequence for your bad actions. But over here, not so much. And they keep talking about how things are going to change. We talked about this in 2024. And I don't know. I just have my doubts. I think that the system is rigged, and I think there's a deep state that's messing around with everything. And unless something's going on that I don't know about, nothing is going to change. Now, it's funny. Do you go on the internet much and go into any of these sites that are kind of off the beaten path? And they'll all
used to. I quit doing that because,
Well, it's fun. They're fun because they make you think that something is happening in the background. There's something going
happening.
on.
That's wishful thinking.
They're making you feel hope where there isn't any right now. I mean, they talked about, if you remember, right after 2020, something's going to happen next week. It's going to happen next week because they're not going to let this illegitimate election stand. So you hang in there. It's going to happen by next Tuesday. And then Tuesday would come by and the guy would say, well, it's been put back because we had something happened in the background that everything has been moved another 3 weeks. So in 3 weeks, it's going to happen.
All right, all the time, they on the left, they always have an excuse for everything. So let's just say, to keep us at bay, they're controlling both sides of the conversation, and they're the ones that are controlling the conversation that you just mentioned.
Oh, yeah.
Well, something happened, and it's going to be another 3 weeks to give us hope and to keep our focus off doing something ourselves because they are afraid of us, so they're keeping us busy.
Well, I think I said this to my wife. She's much smarter than I am, and I like getting feedback from her. You notice how I said that? I'm not stupid. But but the fact of the matter is, I said, it wouldn't surprise me. With every rumor, with every possibility, I think there is a seed of truth. Something might have be in the wind. Something could be out there working for the good of the nation. But I think that the bad guys also know this, like you said, and they surround that seed of truth with a sea of swill. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They bury it in baloney. I'll leave it like that. They just cover it with stuff that just doesn't make any sense at all.
Then when it gets, then when they can, they sit there and say, see?
Yeah. Nonsense.
Fake news. And the fake news is what they're spewing. But they've had control of everything for a long, long time.
Yeah.
We are not getting the true story out there. I think I made a mention that, I got on a soapbox in an email to you.
Soapbox?
Yeah, soapbox. Because I didn't see I had a problem. I don't have cable. I, use the internet.
Right.
And I said, I got to join the Fox thing. So I joined the Fox thing to sit there and see everything.
Right.
And it was really great. I put in my zip code and everything here in the United States, and I got the Spanish feed. I was like, what the hell is this going to do me?
Was this for the Super Bowl?
Yeah. So I had to sit there and go back out, and I had to look up a zip code in Mexico so that I could, pretend like I was in Mexico. And then I got the American feed.
Isn't that super?
It really was. So I missed the one national anthem, but I saw the other one. The
woke one? The black?
I saw Chris Stapleton,
that was good. He did a nice job on that.
he did a very good job. And then I saw a lot of people post, how can you not help but cry through this? And I'm going, wait a minute. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa.
Yeah.
Let's back this bus up.
I know.
Just a few years ago.
I know.
Well, that song made everybody take a knee. And how racist it was. The people, the lyrics, the music.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, it's words on a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
It's notes on a piece of paper. Nice words, nice notes. But you took it and twisted it and maligned it. But now all of a sudden, Chris gave the passion and the meaning, the true meaning,
Mm-hmm.
just in his interpretation and inflection of that song. And all of a sudden, now you're a patriot. Now you're an American.
Yeah.
What the hell?
Do you know how much the left likes to divide us and to point out never mind the fact that we're all part of the same country and that we're all Americans and that we stand united no matter what our color or gender is. None of that makes anything to the left. None of that means anything, because I'll tell you why. They showed the 4 jets flying over in formation, 4 or 7 jets, whatever they were, flying over in formation after the national anthem, and they were quick to point out it was the first time that they were all women flying the jets. And I'm thinking, but wait a second, that isn't the first time women have flown a jet. They've been flying jets in combat for years. But they had to point out that there was a difference. You can't see the pilot, by the way. They're doing 300 miles an hour above the stadium. You can't see him.
Yeah, the pilot didn't say anything on the radio.
Nope. Didn't say anything. They weren't wearing dresses. I guess what I'm trying to say is that it shouldn't make a difference. Right now, in the 21st century, we should expect equality. Expect it, not point out like it's a surprise. Surprise!
Yeah.
They're all women in those airplanes.
Well, it's great that you have a woman squadron. You've had black squadrons. And, going back to the
World War II.
The
Tuskegee Airmen. Yeah.
Yeah, and those guys are great.
They were
had
great
some
pilots.
Problems. Yeah, they were absolutely fantastic. But we're sitting there, we're after this wokeism. What? Yeah, well, look up there. We got all transgender pilots up there now.
That's going to happen. That's going to happen. Absolutely. I mean, they sang the Black National Anthem last night after the national anthem. Nobody asked them to sing the Black National Anthem, and I don't know whether it's been accepted as a real national anthem because it only is a song for one segment of our society. How would you feel? How would you feel if we had the German national anthem or the Irish national anthem out there?
Well, that's just it. I mean, his interpretation included everybody. It wasn't. Now they took the song and they made it a divisor. It was a divisive song.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few years ago, I believe, out in San Francisco, they did it. Now all of a sudden, it's a uniter, and it's almost like they had to tear apart patriotism so they could put it back together and own it. Kind of like Joe what he did in his State of the Union. Let's tear down everything that Trump was about. And make America great again. Let's be honest. Trump didn't invent that phrase. Make America great again.
Ronald Reagan. Yeah.
And Trump really liked Reagan.
You know what Joe is known for. You actually found that song, and God bless the guy who sings it. He has a lot of courage for doing so, but he really does sound like President Biden.
He's got it nailed, I'll tell you right now. I mean,
You got to love that guy for his lyrics. I mean, he must have spent like maybe 15, 20 seconds figuring out a lyric line for that song. Oh, my
He
God.
was probably listening to a Biden, news clip.
Probably
Going,
State of the Union. That is the State of the Union to music. Oh, anyway, I think we've just about done it, my friends. Another show in the can. If you'd like to contact us, 833-538-7868 is our phone number, 833-538-7868. We have email, too.
Yeah, mail at itsanotherday.com or mail at crnamerica.com. So, no matter how you do it, you can get to us if you want to get to us.
Yes.
Hey.
And we're still looking for the right sponsors for the program. If you are somebody who likes the idea of advertising on a podcast that can be heard around the world, around the country, and to hundreds of thousands of people on a regular basis, then you may have found the right podcast right here.
That's exactly right. By the way, you can email Joe Biden at mail at .com.
Yes, mail it. You have to smile when you hear that song, don't you?
Yeah, macaron, no, chacaron.
One more time.
Chacaron, chacaron,
Come on, Joe, get into it. Thank you, Joe. Hey, Bill. Have a great day, my friend.
Adios.
The voice of freedom, CRN America. These days, when you want an answer about just about anything, you ask Alexa. You ask her about the weather. You ask her who won your favorite sporting event. You ask her to find a fact that you can't find anywhere. Well, we did that too. We asked her how many people have downloaded itsanotherday.com. And this is what she said.
Yeah.
From acceleration.com. It has been downloaded as much as 260,433,467 times.
I know. Seems like a lot. Seems like a lot to us too. But it's Alexa. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And tell your friends about itsanotherday.com. We could use an extra listener. I mean, what do you do when you only have 260 million?